We never get tired of talking matter sports in the entire world, but obviously what is happening in Kenya and our continent Africa. But right now, we want to discuss about football development in Africa with an expert in the sector, Brian Wesaala, founder and CEO of Football Foundation for Africa. Good to see you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Maxwell. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you for coming through. You were in Rwanda the other day. When did you travel back?
I traveled back on Sunday. I actually got back to Kenya on Sunday morning.
What was really happening in Rwanda? Rwanda has been a beehive of activities lately as far as sports is concerned. Hosting, basketball championship and, a lot of conferences taking place. President Paul Kagame has been passionate about sports. Is it also attributed to him, his love for the sport?
I think Rwanda is one of the few countries in Africa who have realized the potential of sports and specifically the business side of it. So they're pushing a lot sports tourism. So selling Rwanda as a destination for sports tourism. I think they also have in place a very comprehensive sports development policy, which was launched last year that they're trying to develop. And this is one of the reasons I was also there to explore opportunities. Maybe I'll share more about that later in the show. But yeah, Rwanda is becoming a sports destination on the continent, and they're packaging themselves in that way.
Are they embracing their sports initiatives, programs being launched to ensure that growth and development of the sport is on another level?
You can see a lot with what they're doing, especially in basketball.
Yes.
Hosting the high-level events from NBA Africa and this kind of thing. So these kind of things bring resources. They bring the needed visibility to the country. And you also know the partnerships they have, for example, with Arsenal and PSG,
yes.
Visit Rwanda. So this is all in line with sports tourism and how they are trying to package themselves. So it's a matter of attracting resources to the country to develop sports. And from Kagame himself, he understands the value of sports in terms of a platform for human development. So that's very much part of their sports development policy. And it will be interesting to see how they progress in the next 5 to 10 years, because their policy was relaunched last year, and they have a 10-year plan. And what would be interesting for me as well to see if other countries can follow suit or borrow from what Rwanda is doing to promote, to develop sports in their own countries.
Being a patriotic Kenya, I know you mean well for Kenya. As a country where you come from, you will want it to thrive as far as sports and football development is concerned. African Cup of Nations is currently happening, but Kenya is not participating. As someone who forms an integral part as far as ensuring that, football grows and gets to another level, not only in African continent, but the entire world, do you think whatever you've been advocating for and pushing, the initiative has been borrowed to be incorporated in Kenyan system?
So what I've been advocating for, pushing, is more investment into grassroots football on the continent. Of course, starting with Kenya, because I think this is really critical. When you see what is happening at AFCON, the countries that are there, of course, some of the countries there are what you call traditional powerhouses. They rarely miss out. But at the same time, we have other powerhouses that are at home. It's not only Kenya, South Africa, DRC, Zambia. They have all missed out on AFCON. But AFCON for me is the platform where you get to show the work that you have been doing over the years. So if you look at the countries that have made it, the likes of Cape Verde, Comoros, they have very long-term strategies that involve development of the grassroots, you see. And that is something that over time, Kenya and even the continent as a whole has fallen back. If you look at Kenya in the late 80s, early 90s, Kenya was a football powerhouse on the continent. We made it to the 1988 AFCON, 1990 AFCON, and this AFCON had only 8 teams. 1992 as well, we made it there, and there were only 12 teams. So Kenya was a powerhouse. But after that, from 1994, things started to change a bit in the sports space. You can indirectly attribute some of it to politics, which are issues of governance. Very important that we start looking at how we manage sport, how we govern sport, who gets. I think early on the show, people talk about getting the right leaders in place. So these are some of the things where Kenya has fallen back in terms of development. It's not an issue that there is no talent in the country. It's how do we manage this talent so that it gets to the highest level. So since the mid-90s until 2004, when we made it again to AFCON after beating Cape Verde here, not much has been done in terms of developing the sport from the grassroots level. And I also say it's important that we be seen to develop the sport as a business, because things have moved from when football was very amateurish. Now football is business. You see, when we talk about football development, people will only probably think about coaches, referees, but how are we managing our clubs, for example, right from the grassroots? Are these economically, socially viable entities? I think we need a more holistic approach when it comes to football development. We need to make it relevant to the society in which we are in. Government needs to invest, the private sector needs to invest. And if we don't get especially the governance aspects of football right, then we turn away investors from football. And this is the challenge we have now. We made it to the 2019 AFCON, but for me that was not, it was not something that we should be proud of per se. We all know what happened with Sierra Leone being banned from, by FIFA. And it was more of a case of chance rather than merit that we made it to 2019 AFCON. But we can attribute all this to our failure to develop the sport holistically right from the grassroots. And this is something I keep saying, and that's why the reasons I set up the Football Foundation for Africa, to work directly with grassroots football communities, so academies, clubs, and other organizations using football in one way or the other. Because the way the industry is structured globally, resources are distributed top-down. And when this happens, it rarely gets to the bottom of the pyramid. So the federations, they'll get the money, they'll try to put in place the program, but by the time it reaches to that club at the grassroots, there is very few resources. That's why you have little happening in terms of infrastructure development. Even the coaching education that we have is not reaching as many coaches as it should. The clubs at the bottom there, they don't have sponsors because they have not been trained in the business of sports. How do they package themselves so that they can attract even the local businesses, the local communities to come and support them? So it's really shifting our focus away from just thinking of football as talent development, coaching developing, refereeing development, to a more holistic approach and seeing how can we use football as a platform to develop young people so that corporates can come in, international development agencies can come in. So how do we get more resources to the grassroots level in Kenya and the continent?
Excellent insights as far as football development at Mashinani grassroots is concerned, especially investment in the sport. Because I think we all know that is where you and I understand, that is where people are passionate about football, plenty of untapped potential, but we lack policies and structures. And you know, people mistake football investment and development at Mashinani for, you know, these tournaments that happen during December holidays. You know, someone staging a competition, then waiting for another year to do another one without continuity of these players who've graced, you know, these competitions. Is it high time now, you know, those people who are at the helm of football management, governance aspect of the sport, can consider that, you know, it's high time policies, structures at the grassroots level are enhanced to ensure that, you know, we get to another stage?
I think policies have always been there. We are always developing policies and launching policies. For me, the challenge usually is in implementation of these policies. You know, it doesn't matter how good a document you come up with. If you don't have the people to
colorful blueprint, no execution.
No execution. And execution is a matter of people. You know, we need more people in sports, in football. Not only passionate people, but also knowledgeable people, you know. For a long time, in Africa especially, sports management has not developed. Sports management education is lacking because football was not being treated as an industry. It was more of a leisure activity, as a pastime, and therefore we have not developed the knowledge to support the growth of the industry. We have not developed the right professionals to support the growth of the industry. You look at football, for example, a lot of the managers or the administrators you have there are doing it more as a side job or as a part-time. this is what I do, but I also double up as a chairman of a certain club. This is what I do, but I'm also a chairman of a sub-branch somewhere in the country. So we don't have enough full-time professionals, sports management professionals, to run the industry. And it's because also the industry has not been paying as it other professions. So it's a difficult situation to be in, but I think it's high time we get more people who can manage football on the continent. And these people should be dedicated to the management of sports, the management of football on the continent, and not doing it as a part-time or for other reasons. You see the tournaments that are organized now, usually it's political. Right now there's a lot of politics going on in the country. So you'll find politicians organizing tournaments for young people. Yeah, this is good. But as you rightly point out,
and saying that they want to nurture talent.
Exactly.
I think that has been a misused phrase lately.
It's a misused phrase, especially by politicians. But we need those resources. But as you rightly point out, there is no continuity. You know, after this election period, then what happens after? Who will be there? That's why I think we need more players who are dedicated to the development of sport, the development of football in the country, who can have the right knowledge as well, because we have very few people who are trained in sports management, and those who are trained are not even working in the field, or they're not being given the chance to run the critical institutions that are responsible for the development of sports.
There is a problem bedeviling Kenya, especially when it comes to matters elections of sporting federations. You know, former players want to rise to the occasion and get elected to be at the helm, to serve as administrators in our federations, football, FKF, athletics, Kenya, AK, Kenya Rugby Union, KRU. And they always say that, you know, it has to be given to me because I'm a former player. Not distinguishing the aspect of you being a former player and being a football manager are two different things. Patrick Motepe, for example, the man in charge of CAF, Confederation of African Football, I think is the owner or president of Mamelodi Sundowns as well, is a man whose business, you know, expertise is on another level, and he must have also done football development as a course, as something he pursued in an institution. How do we infiltrate that, you know, into Kenyan football minds, that, you know, you don't need to be a good manager for having played football? Sometimes we get good managers not from football background, because right now as we speak, FKF committees 6 months is almost elapsing, and we will be having elections. People will be standing for elections, and you will see former players, most of them vying for presidency, saying that, you know, it has to be given to me because I played football for national team.
I think that's a challenge we have, and I would challenge these players to come out and not just saying we deserve these leadership positions, but to show us how they are going to contribute to the development of the sport. Can they come up with strategic plans that will be implemented, for example? And again, this goes back to how we develop, especially players from the grassroots level. You know, in Africa or in Kenya, sometimes I feel, or rather my opinion is, the industry has been mis-sold to us. So you have people who are really focusing on being footballers at the expense probably of their education. You find most of our players after high school, probably they did not pursue an education further, and they focused on football, which means it's okay for those who make it in football, and they make it to a certain level where they're able to earn from the sport. But you and me know these are very few. It's a very low percentage of players who are earning sustainable income from playing football. So what I've been advocating for is some kind of dual career. Yes, you're pursuing your football professionally, but it's also important that you pursue your education, so that even after playing, you can come back to the federation and see, I was a player, but I also have this diploma in this, and therefore I can contribute to the development of this game. But most of these players honestly cannot. They have some inherent skills by virtue of having played at the highest level, for example. Leadership skills, they have them. Teamwork, they already have them. Communication, they have these skills. but they do not have the technical know-how to manage the sport. They are not managers per se. So that's the challenge we have, and I would challenge players right from an early age to consider, not to consider football as a career, but to consider it as a tool that they have for a certain duration, and then they have to move on to other things. Because most players by 35, 34, especially here in Africa, you have to stop playing. What do you do then? Not all of them can be coaches, but a lot of them could be managers, for example, if they had the right education. Look at what has happened in Cameroon now. Eto'o has taken over the running of the federation. One, he is confident, he commands a lot of international attention, but at the same time he has taken time to develop his educational, his management skills through education. And therefore when he stands up and says, I want to take over the leadership of football in this country, he has all the credentials it takes. But how many of our former players can do the same? How many of our former players can say that? And this is a challenge. The players that we have now, they should already, even as they are playing, start thinking about that future of what they want to do after football or even during their football, and be able to package themselves in that way. Somebody like Motsepe, for him to get to the CAF level, of course, his business acumen is top-notch.
Yes.
Very influential person in South Africa. And you know, at that level also it's about influence.
Yes, yes.
How much can you influence, you know? As with his connection, he can probably bring more resources into the continent's football. But at the same time, I think we need people who are entirely dedicated to the management of football, and that's why I think it's important for a person like Motsepe to have a very strong secretariat. Same here at the national level. You know, you can be at the presidential level, and maybe for you it was by virtue of your influence. But what kind of SG do you have in place? What kind of CEO do you have in place? Is this
I think it's the same thing Gianni Infantino, FIFA president, has been doing, ensuring that in these, you know, member countries, there is federations that are strong to, you know, support his cause to ensure that football at the global stage is enhanced. And you talked about a very critical aspect of, you know, players, besides, you know, their football career, they can have an alternative thing. We've seen the likes of, you know, Alan Wanga, former player. He played for several clubs locally, FC Leopards, and he played for the national team. And right now, as we speak, he's the sports director at the Kakamega County. After, you know, announcing his retirement, parting ways with Kakamega Homeboys, it is something that, you know, we can't fail to take home. Anthony Modo Kimani, he also played for Madara United, FC Leopards. He got injured at, you know, the tender age 24. His football career got crippled, paralyzed. But he had something on the side, and that's what we've been seeing, the likes of Boniface Ambani, you know, Simon Mulama, not forgetting our very own former captain for the national team, Musa Otieno. Those guys are top pundits on TV when it comes to matters football analysis. It is something that we see with Didier Drogba. You know, at an international level, Didier is moderating a session that a gala night that has to award Ballon d'Or, you know, winners. I think it is something that our footballers, like you said, have to emulate. But as a stakeholder, what do they say when you tell them so?
I think most are open to the idea, because nowadays I interact with players a lot, especially at the grassroots level. I think they see it, but still
there is that aspect of reluctance.
Reluctance, you know, and it's because of what football is. I am a footballer myself, so I understand what it means. Oh,
you played football?
I played football up to nationwide, NSL level here. So by then I was playing for Strathmore University FC, and you can see the passion that is there. You know, when you talk about Africa, we always talk about passion, talent. We want to be footballers. But the reality on the ground is that there are not enough professional opportunities for footballers on the continent. So two things have to happen. One, players have to fashion themselves differently so that they have this dual approach to their career. And then as an industry, we also need to start thinking more holistically, as I said before. We need to start seeing what other opportunities are there in the industry. You know, one professional player, for example, if you talk about Europe, you can find he's employing about 20 people indirectly to support him. There is physiotherapists, there is lawyers, there is statisticians. How come in Africa we have not taken time to look at what other opportunities are there to support the development of sports. I mean, we need researchers in the game.
Because I don't need to be a player to be part of the team. I can be a physiotherapist.
Exactly, and you still get to work very closely to your passion, because it's all about passion at some time, most of the time. If you can be a researcher and you're giving us data on how football is developing on the continent, then there is a huge opportunity for that. You know, the participation level in Africa are very high, but nobody is taking the time to even quantify and informing the continent of the economic potential of the sport. And this should be the work of an economist. So imagine a situation where you have an economist who is also passionate about football and is able to give us direction on how and why we need to invest in football. Right now you go to a lot of companies, they will ask you, okay, you want us to support you, you want to support your organization, you want us to support your tournament, but what's the return on investment for us? Because everybody is looking for a return. Then that's where the conversation usually drops. You know, our federations, they have a product like the national team, but they are unable to package it to our corporates to sell it. That needs investment in good sports management education, marketing education, sponsorship education. A lot of research happens around in these spaces, but in Africa we haven't done enough, or we haven't even started doing much.
Yourself, you've said that you are in Strathmore, and Strathmore is one of the institutions that is good at offering scholarships to those people who exhibit enormous talent as far as sports is concerned, football, basketball, rugby. How do you think, you know, sports stakeholders locally can collaborate and partner with these institutions, the likes of Daystar, you know, the likes of Catholic University of East Africa, to ensure that, you know, our sportsmen, we get to recognize them? Because sometimes you can blame our footballers. Someone wants to play for, let's say, Mathare United, just an example, get some few coins so that feeds his family and also use the remaining one to educate himself. But you know, it's not enough. So how can there be a collaboration and concrete partnership of our institutions and local sports stakeholders so that, you know, the provision of scholarship programs can continue to empower our sportsmen academically?
I think that is something that I have seen, I think, over the last, even while I was here, over the last 10 years, that some institutions are doing very well. Strathmore University has a very good sports scholarship program. I think even MKU, they do it. A lot of our universities are offering these things. So you find someone is pursuing the Bachelor of Commerce, and they're also playing for the university team. But after university, what happens then? You see, a lot of these people, they would stop playing, or when they start pursuing their careers, they stop playing. And most of them don't even contribute back to the sport. You see, it was basketball, it was football that afforded you a scholarship. But once you are done with that, then that's that. But if these people can see that they need the expertise they have gained as a marketing expert, they can come back and support football, I think that should be encouraged. To further cement the partnerships between sports and our institution, I think these are also the places that should be doing research. I know in Kenya currently it's only KU that is known for sports, and even their sports, what they give as a sports management program is not highly developed. And how closely do they work, for example, with our federations? You know, you could be running sports management programs and sports management research, but is the industry consuming? Is the federation, for example, calling on experts at KU, professors of sports and this kind of thing, to help them in drawing up their strategies? You know, one of the things I realized after venturing into football as from the development side, we have so many sports management scholars from Africa, but based outside the continent, because our industry was not consuming, or rather is not consuming, what they can produce. So one of the things I've been trying to do is to bring these people to support the growth of the industry on the continent. And I run a show, I think we should be starting next month, the Africa Football Business Show. I try to bring people from academia, people from industry, and see how do we create conversations, those interactions that can feed into the development of the industry. Because it shouldn't be a case of guesswork. You know, sometimes I say, when we say, okay, we are passionate, we are talented, it also becomes a game of chance. You know, we might find ourselves at AFCON in 2023, but are we able to replicate that in 2025? Probably not, because what we did was chance. But if you're investing in proper knowledge creation and dissemination structures, then you can know, okay, we did not qualify for 2021. Why? Because of this and this and this. This is what we tried and this failed.
Like, so it is something that has happened in Ghana. I was reading some press release this particular morning. Ministry of Sports for Ghanaian government has summoned a stakeholders meeting involving football officials to ask what really transpired in Cameroon for the elimination at the group stage. Something that has never happened, I think, in the previous years. So going back to the drawing board and establishing a future, you know.
What went wrong?
Yes.
And what do we do moving forward? Because you can't get to a point where, okay, we have failed, but you don't know what went wrong, simply because you do not have a proper plan in place. See, when you have a plan, then you know where the plan did not work and you try to correct. And it might not work even the second time, the third time, so you know what do we change? So that's I think is where our sports has been struggling. That's where our football has been struggling. We need to get more professionals on the board. We need to get the research tanks in place so that we have a more knowledge-driven industry as opposed to just passion-driven industry.
So what's the future of football in Africa as a continent? Are we progressive? Are we getting somewhere?
Judging by AFCON, I think we are doing well. You know, this AFCON was organized at a very challenging time, coming out of COVID, and we are not even out completely for the continent. I think that's where a lot of work needs to be done.
The symposiums, you guys, football stakeholders in display in this ongoing shop is Ian Wright, former Arsenal legend and pundit, saying that, you know, if people knew what AFCON means, then they wouldn't have hesitated doing and releasing their players, which means, you know, it's regarded as a continent with, you know, huge and massive potential.
So we've not had enough platforms on the continent to discuss football development. And for me, I also say now football enterprise development, because we need to start looking at football as an enterprise. Also, the discussion of football on the continent has been restricted to very closed spaces. And that is something as the Football Foundation for Africa I'm trying to address. And that's why I was in Kigali. So later this year, we'll be organizing the first Africa Football Business Summit. And this will be a multi-stakeholder platform, bringing together government, private sector, the federations, clubs. Let's have one platform where we can start to talk about an agenda for African football. And let's involve everyone. The plan is to make it a biennial event so that in between the 2 years, we can also take stock of what we are doing. You know, accountability is also one of the challenges we have. How are we accountable to ourselves? So those symposiums, people discuss and they go away. No,
sometimes people discuss, then after they have left the conference halls, nothing is implemented.
No follow-up. So we are trying to create something different, something agenda-driven, so that in 2 years' time we can come and say, this is what happened in 2022. Where are we in 2024 in terms of developing the Africa football industry? And I think by creating this independent platform, Africa will start also having a voice in the development of football. Because right now we are the biggest consumers of football, in my opinion, as a continent. But we do not have a strong voice. The football agenda has mainly been driven by Europe, because that's where the industry is most developed. But how do we change that? Or how do we make Africa stronger in the football space? So these are some of the discussions we need to start having. How do we strengthen the African sports ecosystem so that we'll be seen to playing at the almost equal level as Europe? I'm not saying we create a football that looks like European football, but economically, I think if we organize ourselves well, then we can start to contribute more towards the global agenda. And you just mentioned the idea of players even being stopped from traveling back. this is all an issue of economic value. You know, these players are being paid huge amounts of money, Salah, Mane. So their clubs have taken a financial risk. And that's why they will stop and say, no, we don't want to release our players for 2 weeks.
Or their respective tacticians can fake an injury on a player.
Exactly, they will fake injuries and these kind of things. But it's because they're looking at the economic value. The AFCON vis-a-vis what they're getting at their clubs, you know. They were saying the European Championships, which is played every 4 years, is almost 20 times worth the value of AFCON. That's in financial returns. So you see, those kind of conversations, we're not having them. So how do we grow the economic value of AFCON, for example, so that even as a tournament, it is respected? So that when Mane is called to go and play for Senegal, he doesn't even have to think twice. When Salah is called, they don't have to think twice. You know, in all this conversation, they have been quiet. The players themselves, they haven't talked. It's the Ian Wright, it's the Patrick Freyas, but the players, they know. Yeah, the players, they know. This is what our club is investing in us. Going to AFCON, it's like doing your country a favor, or they'll say it's patriotism. But it shouldn't have, it doesn't have to be that.
So money supersedes patriotism, because at the club level, they are heavily paid, and like at the national team level where, you know, you have to offer patriotic assignments to your team. Someone, like in the past, during Sam Nyamwea's era, you've been there as far as African football is concerned. Players used to foot their own flight charges to travel back to represent Kenya.
Yeah, I think we have to be honest and say there's only so much you can do out of patriotism and love for your country. But it gets to a point where you're saying, where does it make sense for me to invest myself? And that's why we see all African players want to live and play in Europe at some point. My dream, or rather my goal, is one day players will just want to play in Africa, because it offers more or less the same economic
Alex
opportunities.
Song is back in Africa playing for a side in Djibouti.
In Djibouti, you know, because the financial rewards are there. I think it's the best run.
What is the secret behind this fast rising profile of clubs in Djibouti?
I think it's only this one club. It's called Solar something. But yeah, you have to look at who owns it and this kind of thing. You know, we have these we have big businessmen. Sometimes they get behind a club, they put in their money, usually just as a what do you say, as a toy. You know, it's not really like they're looking for a return from the club. But we need to move beyond that. But how do we attract more Alex Song back to the continent to make our football more entertaining, to pull more fans to the stadium? I think those are the questions we need to start asking ourselves over the year, and we make it consistent as you put it out. It's not just a one-off, you know. AFCON will be over in February 6th. We have to go back to our leagues. Our leagues are attractive. Look at East Africa. No representation. When I talk about East Africa, I talk about CECAFA. No representation at the AFCON, apart from Ethiopia, who have already been kicked out. As the region sat down and tried to determine how come we are not able to qualify. Can we collaborate as a region to find solutions? For example, the AFCON has been expanded to 24 teams, but still no team from the East African community. Where is the problem? So if we don't start asking ourselves these critical questions, then we'll always find ourselves complaining. Our football is being poorly run, football is corruption, but we cannot complain forever. We need to start to come up with solutions. We need to identify where we are going wrong so that we can move forward.
Where is the problem? Africa right now, 24 teams taking part, no one from East Africa representing this subcontinent. Of course, that has been the parting shot for Brian Wesaala, the CEO and founder for Football Foundation for Africa. Quality conversation, and thank you for coming through. It's been an interesting, you know, discussion, and we look forward to having more of this going forward, right?
Thank you very much, Maxwell. It was a pleasure to be here, and I definitely look forward to coming back and informing you of our projects and our programs. And yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Sure. Of course, Touchline continues. Of course, it's the end of the show, but continues on social media platforms. Hashtag Touchline Y254 Wasike Maxwell at Touchline Y254. Where is the problem as far as African football, especially in East Africa, is concerned, because right now the tournament in Cameroon is ongoing, African Cup of Nations, but Ethiopia, which was, you know, our sole representative, has been already eliminated. Kenya, unfortunately, not taking part. Of course, it's the discussion that continues online, but it's been a pleasure having you on board. Thank you for tuning in. Saturday next time, same place. Hope to see you again. Keep, you know, ensuring that you comply with the guidelines as far as COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, so that we can combat this international monster. Thank you for tuning in. God bless, peace, and have a nice weekend.